Support for Radio Friends comes from Columbia Healthy Smiles, the dental office of husband and wife team Dr. Batson and Dr. Abe, offering comprehensive and customized care to patients of all ages. Learn more by calling 573-721-9039 or online at www.columbiahealthysmiles.com. Good morning. Welcome to Radio Friends on December the 2nd, 2020. Do you realize before too long we will be saying 2021? It's just kind of hard to believe, isn't it? We've got my friend John Howe, who is author of The Foolish Corner. It's good to have you here in the studio, John.
Well, good to be here. Yeah. Who can believe it's December already? My
I know.
gosh.
We haven't seen you in person for quite a while. There you are, 7.5 feet away from me, and kind of look like we have to wave to you so far away.
Feeling comfortable about that, though.
Yeah, but you wanted to talk today. You've got a bunch of different biases that you write about in your book today, and I think we've touched on about 3 or 4 biases, haven't we?
At least.
Yeah. Today, it's availability bias. So what is availability bias?
Okay, availability bias is the fact that we give relative importance to ideas or facts or experiences that are most easily retrieved from memory. So basically, if it's available to you in a sense, from your memory, then you tend to give it a lot of importance. And some things that you can pull up easily from your memory are important, but the danger here is that some of the things that you kind of unconsciously give importance, weight to, are not particularly important. And so you can make
Give me an example.
Well, here's the thing. So we've talked in the past about these human biases, and Daniel Kahneman, who's a psychologist who won the Nobel Prize in economics for essentially starting the behavioral economics field, basically says, I'll give you an example in just a minute, but he basically says, and I'm quite aware of where I'm sitting. I'm sitting in the best journalism school in the world, but he basically says it's because of the way the media cover the news, and that we sometimes get these relative importances wrong, right? So let me give you, I've got a couple of facts here that might help shed some light on that. So, for example, if you ask people, they will say, and there have been studies that do this, that accidents are about 300 times more likely to kill people than diabetes. But diabetes is about 4 times more likely, actually, to kill people than accidents. And the difference there is that accidents tend to be in the headlines. Right. And by the way, let me hasten to add here that there's also social media, Facebook and so forth. Social media
can twist things around 100%.
And they're not curated by the finest journalists in the world, right?
Right.
So it's not all media, but the point is, what are we seeing every day, right?
Yeah.
And just another statistic, for example, tornadoes are thought to kill more people than asthma, and we had that tornado in Joplin.
I don't think that's true.
But in fact, you're right. It's not true. The number of asthma kills 20 times as many people as tornadoes. And so the point here is one of the dangers of the availability bias is that we give the wrong weights to various risks that we undertake.
Okay,
right?
And you have to be aware of that when you mention social media. When you're looking at social media, because so many times you see something and you say, oh, I kind of agree with that. I'm just going to go ahead and share it because you agree with it, whether you've actually done research on whether it's true or not.
Right, and it's so easy to do. So one of the things, this is in some sense, technological advances which have increased the speed of communication, the breadth of communication, the width, all the dimensions of communication. This is a little bit of a downside to it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think technology is always a bit of a mixed blessing. And in terms of communication technology, you can hit that like button, you can hit that share button, and off it goes. And, you like you said, you haven't done the research on it,
right,
and so forth.
Now, availability bias, how does that fit into our financial planning?
Well, that's a really good question. So here's kind of an ancient example, and then I'll give you one more recent one. But I know that people that lived during the Depression became very risk averse. And so basically, people lived through the Depression, understandably, but that idea of the Depression was always available. Right. And so they became so risk averse that they invested very little in the stock market, but they missed out in the big run up, especially following World War II, of the stock market.
Because they were afraid. They lived through a part of the country a time in the country when you had nothing and you lost everything.
And it's understandable why this memory was always available.
Yes.
It didn't fade with time, so to speak. Not quite as dramatic, but we had a financial crisis really worldwide in 2008 would be the biggest 1 year of it. And a lot of people that got burned in that in the stock market then had stopped investing in the stock market. And because in 2009, that was still a memory that was right there.
I can when you mentioned this, I hadn't thought about it for a while. In fact, I hadn't thought about it for about 40 or 50 years. But my father lived through the Great Depression. And I can remember as a kid, whenever he would talk to somebody who was buying stocks in the stock market, he would not do that. He would just he said, I'll put my money in the bank where I know I'm going to get the interest, and that's it. I'm not going to take a chance on it. That was availability bias, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, because that's a very vivid memory. So it was always available to him.
Yeah.
So I would say, too, though, in some sense, we make these misjudgments about risks. The other thing is we make misjudgments just about the world as a whole. And let me just mention a couple of things. One is there are two books that basically argue, if you look at the data over the last 50 years or so, the world has been getting better and better. And it's hard to believe, but there's one book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, by Steven Pinker, and basically argues that violence has gone down over time, consistently over time, but our perception of violence is not. And let me just give you two stats.
Okay.
1991 was the peak year for violent crime, 758 per 100,000 population, and in 2018 it was 369. Basically, violent crime from 1991 to 2008 has been cut in half.
But if you're watching this on some reports, it looks like it has gone just the opposite.
That is exactly right. It's because the violence is available to us out there in the headlines, so to speak.
You know what, John? We're out of time with this, but it's really interesting talking to you about availability bias, and not only financially, but in our everyday life, availability bias plays a big part.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know, yes.
If people want your book, it's called The Foolish Corner, and it's available where?
It's available on Amazon, both print on demand and as an ebook.
Okay, so it's The Foolish Corner. You can find it on Amazon, and read it. It's interesting. It's interesting. Thank you so much. Please come back again.
Well, I would love to.
All right, John Howe, professor at University of Missouri. Pleasure having you here. Bye-bye.